see some showers or longer spells of rain in places, but staying on the warm side. See you again soon.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "No, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political budgets.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Saturday nights on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
Saturday nights on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, the King's historic coronation is now just days away, and still the Sussex circus continues to threaten to overshadow the glorious occasion.
Sussexes had to wait for some time to really get that confirmation that they were 100% welcome at this event.
So, as they wheel out their odd little mouthpiece to blame Buckingham Palace for the drama, and rumours swirl that Harry could still pull out at the last minute, is the Duke of Delusion simply using this historic event as a PR exercise to prop up his faltering brand? Well, Harry's biographer Angela Levin kicks off our blockbuster coronation coverage with that shortly. If the sour spare does bother turning up to the biggest day of his loving father's life, he'll be forced to face the Queen he's so viciously attacked.
The villain that made her dangerous because of the connections that she was forging within the British press.
Star Daily Telegraph columnist Celia Walden explains why the devious Duke owes Camilla and pretty much everyone else an apology at the coronation. She's uncancelled on that later in the show. Plus, as Republicans plan mass protests on the day of the coronation, is a monarchy under King Charles and Queen Camilla good for Britain? Petronella Wyatt, who's a friend of Camilla, defends the monarchy against the head of the UK's Republican movement, Graham Smith, in the clash. And breaking tonight, one of the late Queen's most famous admirers, Donald Trump, has slammed the Sussexes for their twisted hate campaign against the monarchy that made them.
She was treated so disrespectfully by Meghan, and just no reason to do that. I was actually surprised that Harry was invited, to be honest.
More from Nigel's huge world-exclusive interview with the former US president in the media buzz. He'll be here as well before my superstar panel have their say on the Donald's extraordinary intervention just days before the coronation. Tonight, I'm joined by Christine Hamilton, Adam Brooks and Matthew Laza. And then, as I just mentioned, the man who made it all happen, Nigel, joins me live for Behind the Scenes Insight, and he'll be alongside the senior advisor to Trump's 2024 presidential campaign, Jason Miller, as they react to some of the other bombshells from that world-exclusive interview, including the Donald's unmissable take on scheming Sturgeon's gender madness. Also on the way is Slippery Starmer, the least trustworthy Labour leader in history.
We have to make the case for freedom of movement. We don't want open borders. Freedom of movement has gone and it's not coming back.
I'll explain why Sir Flip-Flop can't be trusted with the keys to number 10 in my digest next. Also on the way, best-selling author Lionel Shriver defends her controversial assertion that trans is the new anorexia after her no-holds-barred column sparked a lefty Twitter storm. She's fired up and live shortly as ever. We're going to have a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages, hot off the press. A brand new Greatest Britain and Union jackass crowned before the night is out too. This is Dan Wootton tonight. Let's go. You're watching GB News, Britain's news channel. We are going to be crossing live to Scotland very soon to catch up with Nigel Farage, who's going to have all of the insight on what was an extraordinary and astonishing and absolutely gripping sit-down with Donald Trump, which you may have missed earlier, but don't worry, I've got all of the highlights coming up for you if you did. Also, a quick programming note, we are live at Buckingham Palace tomorrow night as we count down to the coronation. I'm going to be joined by all of our royal family, Tom Bower, Paul Burrell, Lady Colin Campbell, Phil Dampier, Angela Levin. They're all with me at the Palace. I hope you will join us too. That's 9 p.m. tomorrow night. My digest on Slippery Starmer in just one moment, though. First, Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thank you. Good evening to you. The top story tonight on GB News. Donald Trump has told GB News he would end the Ukraine war in 24 hours if he was in the White House again. In an exclusive interview with Nigel Farage aired this evening, the former US president said the war has to be stopped.
If I were president, and I say this, I will end that war in one day. It'll take 24 hours. I know Zelensky well. I know Putin well. I would get that ended in a period of 24
You can break that deal.
100%. It would be easy. That deal would be easy. A lot of it has to do with the money. A lot of it has to do with the military, that we're giving. But I would get that deal done within 24 hours. That war has to be stopped. That war is a disaster.
And you can see that whole interview on the GB News app or on YouTube. Now, Ukraine denies it was behind a drone attack on the Kremlin. A video appears to show President Putin's residence being hit late last night. Russia says it was an assassination attempt, but the attack was thwarted with electronic devices disabling the aircraft. President Zelensky says Ukraine had nothing to do with it.
We don't attack Putin or Moscow. We fight on our territory. We are defending our villages and cities. We don't have, enough weapon for this. That's why we don't use it anywhere. For us, that is the deficit. We can't spend it. And we didn't attack Putin. We leave it to tribunal.
Volodymyr Zelensky speaking there. Well, in news here at home, the Prime Minister says he's aware tomorrow's local elections in England will be tough for the Conservative Party. On the last day of campaigning, Rishi Sunak says he's focused on delivering the people's priorities.
We're concentrating on delivering on people's priorities to a local level. That's about lower council tax, where Conservative areas have council tax that's on average £80 lower than Labour ones. Crime is lower and we fill more potholes. Nationally, I'm focused on my 5 priorities.
Well, for his part, Sir Keir Starmer says his mission was to get into government by 2024. And he says the party should make gains to show it's not going backwards.
I have to say, the baseline for the government is very, very low because they had terrible results 4 years ago, which is the cycle of these elections. That was their second worst election result in their history, and Theresa May had to personally apologise to their candidates afterwards. So they should be making significant gains tomorrow.
And lastly, 3 gowns, once owned by Diana, Princess of Wales, will go on display at the Museum of Style Icons in Ireland before going to auction. The glamorous outfits will officially go under the hammer in Los Angeles in the United States in the summer. They're expected to sell for between £280,000 and £550,000. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and the TuneIn app. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is a highly significant week for our United Kingdom, and we will, of course, be covering the coronation of King Charles III throughout the show ahead of our 2-hour live special from Buckingham Palace tomorrow night. But it's also a highly consequential week in British politics. A week where the true colours of Slippery Starmer have been revealed to the electorate. To the extent, actually, where I believe it's now eminently fair to describe the man christened by the Daily Mail as Sir Flip-Flop as the least trustworthy Labour leader ever. It doesn't matter whether you're coming to this issue from the left or right of the Labour Party, or indeed where you sit on the wider political spectrum. I am not prepared to have a Prime Minister whose word is less meaningless than, say, The Guardian denying it's anti-Semitic. Time and again, Starmer has proven he is a shapeshifter who will say whatever is politically expedient in that particular moment in time. So this week, it was on the tuition fees flip-flop, a reversal which ended the frontline political career of failed Lib Dem Deputy PM Nick Clegg. But that's just the beginning of Mr. Starmer's, and I'm going to say it here, actually, it's just the beginning of his lies. Watch.
We have to make the case for freedom of movement. We don't want open borders. Freedom of movement has gone and it's not coming back.
I'm 100% behind Jeremy Corbyn.
You are now.
I am working with Jeremy Corbyn to try to win the next general election.
Were you pals?
Well, we were never friends in that sense.
You were never friends?
No. And we're committed to updating the GRA to introduce self-declaration for trans people.
Are you still committed to updating the Gender Recognition Act to allow self-identification for trans people?
If you're going to make reforms, you have to carry the public with you. And I think that's a very important message. And I think that's why it's clear that in Scotland there should be a reset of the situation.
So university tuition fees being scrapped will be in a Starmer manifesto?
Yes, that's why it's
the next election. OK.
It's a glaring anomaly that we still haven't moved on from tuition fees. In other words, that you are now going to abandon the pledge to abandon them. That is true, isn't it?
Well, I think we are going to set out a fairer solution. And Justin, so
but it won't be the abandoning of tuition fees, will it?
Well, we are likely.
And by the way, that package could have run for about the full hour. There's so many flip-flops to choose from. Now Starmer can't even give a straight answer about when he began talks with the woke blob's Boris Johnson witch hunter-in-chief Sue Gray about becoming his chief of staff.
Did you first approach Sue Gray to be your chief of staff?
Nick, I know her personally. I met her when I was Director of Public Prosecution.
Might I ask when you first approached her to be your chief of staff? I've been on the lookout for a chief of staff for a little while now. So when did you approach? Can I ask when you approached Sue? Look, if I may call her Sue? I've been looking for a chief of staff for a number of weeks now. I will try again, and obviously you don't have to answer, but when did you first contact Sue Gray about the possibility of becoming your chief of staff? Well, Nick, that's going to be laid out by Sue. But you can't tell me that. Nick, nothing improper at all. No, but you can't tell me when you first approached her. I've been looking for a chief of staff for a little while, but there's nothing improper at all. No, but just answer why you won't tell me when you first made contact with her. I'm not going to go through lock, stock and barrel, but there's nothing improper. If it's not improper, why won't you say, it was a month ago, Nick?
It was. I've been looking for some time, and there's nothing improper in the slightest.
In fact, Sir Geir, as we discovered in a Westminster bombshell last night, Ms Gray has refused to be part of the Cabinet Office investigation into the crooked hiring, so she's not revealing the truth. And did the possible next Chancellor, robotic Rachel Reeves, have a straight answer today? Absolutely not.
This pledge is gone. You're not getting rid of tuition fees. What are you going to do?
But the truth is that the Conservatives have crashed the economy and delivered nothing by the way of economic growth. We have got to look again at what our priorities would be. Nobody can deny that the circumstances at the next general election in terms of growth and the challenges we face as a country are going to be very dire indeed.
So let's just be realistic about this situation. We now have a Labour leader whose pledges to his party mean nothing. I mean, he has to pretend every single day that he doesn't really despise his own deputy, Angela Scum Rayner. And this is all a real warning to our country about whether we can trust a word that Slippery Starmer spouts to us. To respond now, my superstar panel, the author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton, the businessman and activist Adam Brooks, and the former Labour Party advisor Matthew Laza. So, Christine Hamilton, I know it's a big call because look at the recent Labour leaders. You know, you've got Blair, who lied about a war in Iraq. You've got Gordon Brown, who lied about his economic record. You've got Corbyn, who lied about whether he was an anti-Semite or not. But actually, I think Slippery Starmer is the least trustworthy of them all, because he lies and flip-flops on a daily basis. This isn't something that happens every now and then. It's constant.
Well, time will tell whether he takes the biscuit, as it were. At the moment, I would put Blair at the top of the list because the Iraq war was that was unforgivable, the way he lied about that. So the jury's out on that. But, I mean, what Starmer is realising now are the difficulties of possibly being in government. When he was just purely opposition, it really didn't matter what he said. He could, but now he's having to concentrate, now he's having to think about it, and the trouble is he has no vision. He has no underlying philosophy to guide his principles. He doesn't have any principles. You know, this is what I believe in, and if you don't like it, here are my other beliefs. So he's finding that he's beginning to discover that the act of governing is very, very different to the act of opposing. But, I mean, it is quite extraordinary. I mean, you listed them. We've had the tuition fees, and as you said, that didn't end very well for Nick Clegg, did it? He lost his seat, and he was going to nationalise all the commanding heights of the British economy. That's all gone by the wall. He was against high tax and low growth, and now he's in favour of taxing the top 5%. He doesn't know where he is. That's the trouble. He's got no guiding star. He's got no principles by which to make his decisions. And he's just rushing around in the wind. He's being buffeted by the wind.
Indeed, and Adam Brooks, we're talking about the man who, if you believe the polls at the moment, is the likely next Prime Minister of the country. But don't you think the reason that the polls have narrowed so significantly is because we actually can't trust this bloke? We have no idea what he would do in number 10.
I'm horrified that he could be our next Prime Minister. You know, I'm not letting the government off because I've been very critical of the government.
Indeed.
And they've messed a lot of things up. They won't get my vote, and Starmer certainly won't get my vote. But, look, we're talking about a man that blatantly lied about Currygate or Beergate in Durham. He lied about the number of attendees. He lied about whether Rayner was there. He lied about the hotel doing food. He constantly lies, as the clips have shown. Now, we also face the prospect of probably the wokest Prime Minister that could ever be in Starmer. You know, he will go along with the trans agenda. We know that. He will bend his knees to the EU.
Literally.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
He'll be on his
there-
knee.
there's the
He
picture.
took the knee. Look at it right now
He
on
will.
screen.
He will capitulate, to the lefty screams on immigration. It horrifies me what this country is going to become, and it's in a bad place already. Let's not let the government off on that.
No.
I think it's going to get a hell of a lot worse.
I couldn't agree more. And actually, we'll have Farage here later talking about the Trump interview, and Trump was very clear. He thought a lot of the damage that has been done in the US is starting to happen in the UK, even under a Conservative government. So you're right, we cannot let the Conservatives off. But Matthew Laza, I believe you think it's unfair when I describe Starmer as slippery. Why?
Absolutely. He's not slippery Starmer, he's sensible Starmer. The world has moved on since 2019, Dan. And I could sit here and list all the Tory promises that have been broken, all the Tory promises that were made in that election, including the oven-ready Brexit. Well, never mind slow cooking. It's a slow-cooked Brexit because it hasn't properly happened yet. I mean, the world has moved on.
Well, I don't think you should raise Brexit, given that Starmer was the bloke who led the charge for a second referendum, who led the charge to overturn the biggest democratic vote in British history.
Election, Dan. We lost the 2019 election.
So we can't believe a word that Starmer says.
No, because the Labour Party's position is clear in accepting where we are on Brexit and with no question of reintroducing free movement or of going back.
But Matthew, you're an advisor. You're a former advisor to the Labour Party, very senior within the Labour Party previously. You must admit that Starmer's pledges to your party were simply an attempt to hoodwink the left of your party to elect him.
Elect him, yeah.
I think they reflected the situation as it was in 2019. I think Labour would get rid of tuition fees if the money was there. We've had another 4 years of Tory economic failure. There is no money to do those things. Labour will have to drop lots of Labour things that it would like to do, lots of good things that millions of people would like to see.
Out.
But it can't. It's not.
This is not going to go down well with the younger generations.
Why didn't Starmer say at the outset, yes, we would like to do away with tuition fees, which I think...
If we can afford it.
What I would have done...
Bonkers, by the way.
What I would have done differently is I think we should... I think that the way they did the announcement, they should have... whatever the policy is going to be, should have gone alongside the dropping of the getting rid of tuition fees. It will have to be a compromise.
The problem is, I wouldn't even trust this guy to make me a cup of tea, because he'd probably come back with a cappuccino and say... By the way,
it's a good line, Dan, but it's not true.
That was
he's going to give the country the leadership it so desperately needs.
He'll do anything that he thinks will get him power.
And hold on,
what on earth is he going to do?
And did he do that with the Sue Gray report? Has he had influence over what has gone on? Because Boris was the Conservatives' only hope of challenging in this general election.
Indeed. And my feelings on the Sue Gray report...
If they've got nothing to hide, why don't they both come out and say, this is when we first met, this is when we first discussed it.
It stinks,
Let's hear about it.
It really stinks.
It does stink.
Sue Gray is engaging with the committee on appointments after public life, which loads of Tories didn't bother doing. She's sticking by the rules.
But there's a
Matthew
conflict of
Laza,
interest.
Adam Brooks, Christine Hamilton, my superstar panel, thank you so much. And they're with me all night. But coming up, as Prince Harry's pals confirm he'll only be in London for 24 hours for his dad's coronation before jetting back to LA, is the Duke of Delusion simply using the event to try and revive his failing Sussex brand? Well, Harry's biographer Angela Levin offers her unfiltered analysis shortly. But up next in The Clash, as rabble-rousing Republicans plan mass protests on the day of the coronation, will the reign of King Charles and Queen Camilla be good for Britain? Petronella Wyatt, she is a friend of Camilla, defends the monarchy against the head of the UK's Republican movement, Graham Smith. He's got quite a lot to say to me these days, so I can't wait to have him on the show. That's straight after the break, but I want to know what you think on this. Dan at gbnews.uk. Tweet us at GBNews. Our poll running there too. Very feisty clash, I think, coming up.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m.
as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Angela Levin and Lionel Shriver coming up. But time now for the clash. And last night's worrying drama at Buckingham Palace has intensified security fears for this weekend's coronation, not least the threat from protesting bitter Republicans intent on spoiling the fun. With rising anti-monarchy rhetoric in the anti-British media fuelled by treacherous Harry and Meghan, here's the UK's Communist-in-Chief Ash Sarkar explaining why so many entitled Gen Zers in particular are turning away from the royals on, you guessed it, the BBC.
But when it comes to this generation in particular, young people are interested in the values of fairness and in the values of representation. Whatever way you slice it, the monarchy is neither a fair nor a representative institution. And what they've revealed themselves to be is a cartel of some very weird people.
But isn't the truth, regardless of what Sarkar says, that no matter your metric, the royal family is good for Britain, financially alone? The coronation will pocket £1 billion for our struggling economy, on top of the existing £2.5 billion a year net profit the royals generate for simply existing. And despite being a smaller island geographically, our pomp, our ceremony, our history, our tradition is envied by billions around the world. But what do you think? Is a monarchy under King Charles and Queen Camilla good for Britain? Email me, Dan at gbnews.uk. Vote in our poll at gbnews on Twitter. The results shortly. But I'm delighted to say, doing battle on this tonight, Graham Smith. He is the chief executive of the Republic Campaign Group and Star newspaper columnist, a member of high society, a friend of Queen Consort Camilla Petronella-Wyatt. It is great to have both of you here. Now, Graham Smith, look, we have gone toe-to-toe over many years, and I completely respect your right to have your strong belief that the UK should become a republic. Of course I do. Why, though, do you want to ruin the coronation? I mean, why do you have to protest the day of the coronation? That, to me, feels petty and cruel and anti-British.
Well, no, it's none of those things. I mean, obviously, we need to protest the coronation. The coronation is, first and foremost, a pointless parade. We don't need it. There's no legal or constitutional requirement to have it. It is a vanity parade. He could have done what other kings did 150 years ago and say, we don't need any more coronations, let's just move on. He's going to spend an estimated £250 million on this parade. And, of course, it is a celebration of the very essence of monarchy, hereditary transfer of power.
But
and
Graham,
he's
you
taking
must
this top job
accept
without a
that the
single vote
British
being cast,
public
and that needs to be challenged.
support that. You must accept that overwhelmingly, Graham, the British public support that. The royal family only exists
democracy
because...
is not just about the overwhelming majority, which has actually gone down a lot. I mean, it was typically 75, 80% until not that long ago. It's now down around 55%. Some polls put support for abolition up over 30%, and only 9%, 15 in another poll, are enthusiastic about the coronation, and people are certainly not impressed by the idea
You
of
just wait
£250
for
million
Saturday.
being spent on it.
You just wait for Saturday. Petronella, you want to come in?
Yes, of course I want to come in. I do think that you're very old-fashioned. I think republicanism is a very Victorian idea, and the Republican movement was never stronger than under Queen Victoria. I also think that you're out of step because you're missing the point in so many ways. Constitutional monarchy in this country has given us such stability. If you look at other countries around Europe with monarchy... Yes, it is true. Excuse me. How would a series of former politicians elected as head of state provide stability that a monarchy is provided? Look at France, for example. A former French, and don't interrupt, a former French ambassador said to me that they deeply regret getting rid of their monarchy. Our monarchy is the envy of the world.
Not true. Come off
yes,
it.
There's
no demand in France for a restoration of the monarchy. That simply isn't true. You know, the
I'm
point
terribly
is that
sorry, but why
globally
is there
and around Europe,
Will you stop
monarchies have been
interrupting?
catastrophically
Can you
bad.
please stop interrupting?
OK, Graham, let Petronella make a point and then I'll bring you back.
Because you're actually being rather rude. Why then are the European countries that have monarchies, including Norway, which has a Labour government, why is there no movement to get rid of these monarchies if monarchy
good point.
is such an awful thing? Well, it hasn't happened, has it? And these countries...
obviously.
But it hasn't happened because the overwhelming majority of the populations want to keep the monarchy.
OK, Graham, you answer that.
Well, okay, but that's by the by. The point is there is a movement and there are
it's not by the by because you're trying to impose the views of a minority on the views of a majority.
Look, I just want to make a financial point, Graham, for you to respond to, because you must concede that the monarchy is brilliant for Britain. It's great for our economy. It is great for our brand.
Yeah, it costs the taxpayer
huge money into the country.
Less than the price of a Mars bar.
Right. OK, well, let's maybe Petronella can allow me to speak without interrupting for a moment, because I can answer a few of these points. Because the idea that monarchy is good for stability is nonsense. There's no evidence at all. And in fact, historically, monarchies have been absolutely dreadful.
Financially, that's what I put to you.
I'll come on to that in 2 seconds. Historically, monarchies have been dreadful for stability, but financially, there is no evidence whatsoever that the monarchy is good for our economy. I know there's this Brown finance report, but that's been largely debunked. We've got a team of economists currently putting together a different report, which makes very clear that there's no evidence that the monarchy benefits our economy. There's no evidence it's good for tourism.
When you're paid economists,
that's ludicrous.
You're paid economists.
Absolutely ludicrous.
Your paid economists will say anything you want to.
London than any other city in the world is because of our royal family.
Of course they do.
There is no evidence at all that people come to London or the UK because of the monarchy. Now, can you
please be quiet for a second? Because I have a great deal. That is not true. Yes, it is.
Petronella come in now because it's not a good idea for you two to speak over each other. So Petronella, you get in now.
There is, because I deal a lot with the hospitality industry, and they produce charts and sheets that will illustrate, and I'll happily email them to you, that people come to this country Because of the monarchy.
Petronella, can I just ask?
Yes, they do, and I can prove it to you.
Can I just ask you about the personal side of this? And Graham, then I'll let you respond. Look, we've seen on screen, you know, what a great couple, Charles and Camilla. Petronella, you know it's taken me quite some time to get my head around the idea of a Queen Camilla. But over a period of time, folk like you have convinced me that this is going to be a very good thing. But personally, Petronella, you've been out to defend Camilla this week. You've written very, very positive pieces about her. Can you just explain to Graham why she's actually going to be an asset to Britain as Queen alongside King Charles?
Because she is an ordinary person. She wasn't born into the royal family. She wasn't privileged. She knows what people think. She gets it. So whenever she goes out to whether they're tours or to sort of meet people, they're astonished by how down-to-earth she is and how empathetic she is. She's not... she doesn't have red carpet fever. She's not obsessed with the kind of rank and the pomp. She is a very, very nice, decent individual.
This the ideal person for us to have as Queen.
That's wonderful, in which case Petronella can vote for her when they come up to the election for our head of state. But don't tell me that I can't vote for someone else. And that's the bottom line.
I'm not.
Is that you are saying, well, my guy has got the job and his wife, they're in the job.
We're not.
I don't want anyone to have a vote, because I can tell you that if there was a free and fair election and Charles had to go in a studio and debate like we're doing now and was challenged on things like, why did you accept 3 million euros of cash?
Can I also just ask you about two other
he would lose the election and lose it badly.
Can I just say something? That if the public, if there was a referendum and they voted to abolish the monarchy, I would support that, because this monarchy exists on public consent. Because it's a democracy. If you ever...
I'd be a bit worried if you didn't support it, to be honest with you, but I mean...
That is the most churlish thing I've ever heard.
Graham,
you are so incredibly rude.
Graham, I just want to put two other people to you, because I think you probably thought they were going to be great for your movement. But I would now argue that Harry and Meghan have actually done the Republican movement a great disservice. Do you agree? Because so many more people are flooding to support the monarchy because they can't stand the actions of the Duke and Duchess of Delusion. Fair point?
No, I don't agree, because obviously, as I've said before, the polling shows a big drop in support. It's been typically around 75%, is now down as low as 55%. One poll put it as 52%. Support amongst young people.
So you still support Harry and Meghan? You think they're good for your movement?
Well, I don't think I'm relatively indifferent about them, but I mean, I think that they have certainly caused a lot of damage to the monarchy, as has Andrew. So
that's
I think
something we can agree with.
Yes,
that is something
we
can
all
agree with.
That they have taken the shine off.
Graham Smith, the chief executive of the Republic Campaign Group, and the newspaper columnist Petronella White, a personal friend of Queen Camilla. So who do you agree with? Is a monarchy under Charles and Camilla good for Britain? Sim writes, Charles needs to learn who his supporters are and drop the wokists in his midst, pretending to be his friend. They will have him turfed out at the first opportunity. I actually agree with that. From Amber Lee, King Charles is truly the people's monarch. And while his efforts to please are often rejected, no one can deny his genuine longing to connect and empathise with the British people. And from Margaret, I am a great supporter of King Charles and think he will be a great monarch. Perhaps, though, these protests will make the King realise that his pandering to woke groups will not win him any supporters. And your verdict is now in. 70% of you agree that a monarchy under King Charles and Camilla is good for Britain. 30% of you disagree. Coming up, the best-selling author of We Need to Talk About Kevin, Lionel Shriver, caused a Twitter storm with her controversial column in which she argued that trans is the new anorexia. She defends that assertion. Live with me shortly. But first, our countdown to the coronation continues, and with rumours swirling that Prince Harry could pull out at the last minute while the Sussex PR machine goes into overdrive, is the couple trying to overshadow the event with their ongoing circus? Well, Harry's biographer Angela Levin live to give me all of the latest on this straight after the break.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m.
as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The King's coronation is now just 3 days away. And in a typically cowardly move, the Duke of Delusion, Prince Harry, is expected to hurry himself back to his Montecito mansion within 2 hours of the historic ceremony finishing. And there could be more drama to come from the self-confessed spare, with royal journalist Phil Dampier revealing this about the drama behind the scenes here last night.
And even now, if anyone discovers his plans for how he's actually going to fly, and he might still not come.
Really?
You know.
But still wanting to create even more drama, the shameless Sussex's weird little mouthpiece, this bloke Omid Scobie, was sent off to Woke ITV today to claim that it was the royal family who kept Harry waiting and not the other way around.
I think there was never any question about whether he would want to come or not. It was a question at one point of whether he'd be invited, I think. You know, from what I understand, the Sussexes had to wait for some time to really get that confirmation that they were 100% welcome at this event. Of course, this all follows the release of Spare.
Very odd guy, isn't he, that one? Got the royal author who actually knows what she's talking about because she wrote the book. Harry, conversations with the Prince, Angela Levin. So, Angela, this is completely mad because that guy who we just saw, he's the little mouthpiece of Harry and Meghan. So they're now trying to say that it was Buckingham Palace's fault,
they do that
all
with
of the
everything,
drama?
actually. After the event, they then blame somebody, anybody, because it's never their fault. But what was really hilarious is that they say that. They took a while before they actually said, you know, please come. And then they took even longer to decide whether they were OK with the seating. And that's what they were concerned with. Well, if you get an invitation, you then reply to it fairly quickly, I would have thought. That's the way it goes.
Well, Scobie also confirmed today that there have been regular conversations going on between Harry and Charles, which does make me worry, actually, that the King has given in a little bit too easily after the terrible things he wrote about Camilla and
Yeah, but then why is Harry rushing off, actually, before, you know, it's actually really finished? To me, it's a snub that he's going so fast, because he won't have time to say congratulations, he won't have time to hug his father or hug his brother. He'll be off like a rocket. And the thing is, you know, he's catching a plane between 2 and 3 in the afternoon. It takes 10 hours to get to Montecito. We're 7 hours after them, so he'll arrive about 8 o'clock. Now, do you know any 4-year-old is going to have a birthday party at 8 o'clock in the evening?
He should be asleep.
So, of course, also, if he has his birthday at 4, he's going to get so excited, really exhausted. So, actually, why aren't they having it on the Sunday? Has Meghan put her foot down and said he's not to be, you know, late, he's got to come on that day? It's a terrible strain on him, and he can't even relax.
But isn't it just so sad to see this bloke who you knew and who used to have the courage of his conviction be such a pathetic little weasel that he can't even stand to spend a few hours away from the woman who controls his every move?
Yeah, well, she's brainwashed him, and now he'll do as he's told.
So she says you can go, but you've got to be back quickly.
And then he'll do that. He's desperate to please her all the time. But actually, I think you agree with me. She's one of those women you can never please. If she's in a house with 16 bathrooms, the next one she's thinking about has got to have 23 bathrooms. You know, there's it's a tragedy for her that she's never grateful. If she comes into the most famous royal family in the world and is welcomed and greeted, but that's not good enough. She wants to be the queen.
Well, indeed, I want to talk to you a little bit about Meghan, actually, because she's always insisted that she had very little knowledge of the royal family before meeting Harry. But a 2014 entry from her failed blog, The Tig, has actually given the game away. It's gone viral this week, so I'll just show you what it says, Angela. Little girls... So this is what Meghan wrote. Meghan of yesteryear. She wrote, "Little girls dream of being princesses. I, for one, was all about She-Ra, Princess of Power." We're definitely not talking about Cinderella here. Grown women seem to retain this childhood fantasy. Just look at the pomp and circumstance surrounding the royal wedding and endless conversations about Princess Kate. And then, this is even more extraordinary, Angela. Speaking to me last night here on the show, superstar US journalist Megyn Kelly dropped a shocking bombshell that blew Meghan Markle's claims of royal ignorance totally out of the water. Watch this.
I saw, yeah.
It's not for nothing, Dan, but I have it on very good authority now that she had a whole vision board of her life with the royal family and of the royal family themselves and Prince Harry when she was married to husband number 1. Happened to have a good source on that. That's the woman, the global icon.
So she planned this all along. That's what it comes down to. Angela Levin, what an extraordinary scoop from Megyn Kelly, which yet again, coupled with the blog, suggests that Meghan always wanted to worm her way into the royal family. So do you think she's jealous that she's not at the coronation?
Of course. If she's a She-Ra, which she describes herself at, who is a sister of a He-Man, they are rebels and they go to the top and they win. And that's what she came over to do. She followed Harry, what he was doing for a long time. She wore Princess Diana's perfume so that he could actually feel that she was motherly. And it was all planned out. But what went wrong was that she didn't defeat anybody. She wasn't going to be out there in the front. She was going to be walking behind Catherine and William. And that drove her mad. She just couldn't bear it. She just couldn't bear it because she's got to win. She's got to be out there. She's got to be the one that everybody looks up to and admires.
So she's going to hate watching this on her TV set.
Oh,
back
yes,
in California,
she certainly
isn't she?
will. I mean, one of the awful things she said was that what a waste of money Catherine's wedding was. Well, I looked it up. It was £300 million, and hers was 320 million. And so she's actually doing what she's criticising someone else for because she's got to win. She had to spend a bit more, so she had 2 more millions added on to the end. It's a terrible thing that she could never be happy. It's the same. She's got to fight them all.
Angela Levin, biographer of Prince Harry and Queen Camilla. She knows it all, this woman, and she will be with me tomorrow night for our special show live from Buckingham Palace from 9 o'clock. But coming up tonight, we'll have all the bombshells from Nigel Farage's world exclusive sit-down with Donald Trump in Scotland. The former US president didn't pull any punches, but was he right that Harry and Meghan treated the late Queen with disrespect? My superstar panel return to debate that shortly, plus we'll have a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages too. But next, is best-selling author Lionel Shriver right that trans is the new anorexia? Her controversial column asserting just that caused a social media storm, but she's going to defend her claim live next. Don't go anywhere.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope?
It's very much so.
And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The best-selling author of We Need to Talk About, Kevin, Lionel Shriver, is tonight's outsider. And extremist woke gender ideology continues to threaten women's sports, with trans athlete Austin Killips, a man who only started cycling just 4 years ago, winning the top women's prize at the weekend. So while it's obvious this trend is starting to impact on the safety and protection of women's rights, it's also becoming more widespread, with recent statistics suggesting 12% of millennials now either identify as transgender or gender non-conforming. But Lionel Shriver has her own controversial theory as to why these numbers have soared, asking in a brilliant new column for Unheard whether trans is becoming the new anorexia. Unsurprisingly, I'm sure you could have predicted this, it sparked outrage from the trans lobby. One critic, for example, wrote of her essay that it erases trans people, patronises young people and makes anorexia out to be an identity fad. But to respond now, I'm delighted to say Lionel Shriver joins me live. So, Lionel, your column, your thesis prompted huge debate. Can you just outline why you made this comparison between anorexia and trans?
Well, first off, I have to warn you that if I have caused some kind of storm on social media, I don't know anything about it. What you just read
Lucky
out
you.
is the only comment I have read. I have to commend it to everyone. It's the perfect self-protection, complete obliviousness.
It sounds blissful, I have to say. But mark my words, Lionel, it caused a big storm, OK? Everyone was talking about this column.
Oh, how thrilling. I think that the conditions have a fair bit in common.
Yeah.
They're both dysmorphias, which means a distorted impression of the body. And so that a teenage girl will look in the mirror and she's emaciated and she thinks she's fat. Whereas a teenage girl will look in the mirror now and see a boy. And it seems they both conditions seem to be hitting the same population. And that is, especially right now, teenage girls, usually girls who are a little insecure, suggestible, perhaps, sometimes autistic. There's an intersection in both conditions with autism and anxiety and depression and, the whole package. And they both seem to be motivated, at least in part, in not wanting to become mature women. And I noted in the essay that having been a mature woman and having submitted to various physical indignities of womanhood, I'm sympathetic. I don't mind. I don't blame them for wanting to get out of it. But anorexics are starving off the signs of womanhood, and the trans population is actually even more efficient about it, and they just get their breasts slopped off.
And I guess the problem is there's almost existential growth at the moment, especially amongst young biological women who now define themselves as trans. And you talk about, Lionel, how in the 80s and 90s you saw personally a similar thing happen with anorexia, where people almost coveted it as if it made them more interested on the social circuit. Do you think potentially that's happening with some young women, that it's almost a trend, a fad to be trans or be gender non-conforming?
Well, when I was teaching in New York colleges in the 1980s, I noticed that I had a lot of female students coming into conferences confiding in me that they were anorexic. Oddly, any number of these girls were not especially skinny. They didn't look as if they had an eating disorder. But what that gradually revealed to me is that they wanted to be anorexic. Whether or not they had an eating disorder was up to a doctor to determine, but it was clear that it was a prestige diagnosis. And I think that that's what's happened with trans. It is it provides status. And in fact, the whistleblower Jamie Reed has said that one of the biggest problems right now is that it provides status for the parents. And so that in liberal enclaves, Democratic parents are pushing their kids to be trans, especially if it seems as if they might be plain old gay.
Which is just
so
passé these days, Lionel. Who would just want to be plain old gay or lesbian? You know, if you're gay or lesbian these days, you're basically a bigot, aren't you? Just ask Joanna Cherry, who's discovering the way that she's been treated by the likes of Nicola Sturgeon within the SNP. So what do you think parents and authorities need to do, Lionel, to stop this developing as a trend and to make sure that actually, if young people are trans, that this is something that they really are, rather than embracing some sort of social trend? Because, of course, the problem is if you start being treated for it, we've seen that the likes of puberty blockers and the surgery can be irreversible. And there are lots of young women now who want to detransition.
This is a problem for adults. Adults created this. So I'm not really dissing young people who have fallen prey to various uncertainties which hit all of us at that age, trying on different hats, if you will, as to who you are. When you're a teenager, you don't know who you are. I'm very sympathetic with that. It's the adults I'm not sympathetic with, who have put together in very short order an assembly line, so that as soon as you say anything about, well, I'm questioning my gender, I wonder if I might be more comfortable living my life as the opposite sex. It's just whoosh whoosh into this.
Here's the pills.
No real therapy.
Let's chop off the booze. No, I agree. We have to let teenagers, and believe me, I experienced this. Teenagers experiment with their gender and their sexuality. And very often, they're going to come to the conclusion that actually they probably are in the right gender. But Lionel Shriver, it was a fascinating column. Thank you so much for coming on to elaborate tonight. But coming up, should Prince Harry apologise to his new Queen Camilla at the coronation? Star Daily Telegraph columnist Celia Wootton certainly thinks so. She's uncancelled in the next hour. But next, is Donald Trump right that Harry and Meghan treated the late Queen with disrespect? That's what the former president told Nigel Farage. He will be here alongside his former advisor, Jason Miller. Join us in 2 minutes' time.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now? Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News, we're starting the conversation and having the debate that the establishment won't have.
No one will be cancelled.
Join me at 4 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday. We'll be discussing all the big topics of the weekend.
Oh, get cracking!
Always honest, always fun. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, in a world-exclusive interview, Donald Trump has sat down with our very own Nigel Farage and in an extraordinary intervention just 3 days before the coronation, made this attack on Meghan Markle's treatment of the late Queen.
Well, I think that she has been very disrespectful to the Queen, frankly, even during that time.
And then the former US president gave some man-to-man advice to the king on how to deal with his treacherous son.
But I think it was very nice that they invited him, but I was a little surprised. He said some terrible things when you see what he said, and the book was just
horrible. Yeah.
To me, it was horrible.
Yeah, it was.
So following Trump's searing takedown of the Sussexes, is he right that Harry and Meghan have been disrespectful to the late Queen and the new King? That's the big debate with my superstar panel next. Tonight, I'm joined by Christine Hamilton, Adam Brooks and Matthew Laza. Then, as the Donald skewers Nicola Sturgeon in one fell swoop.
It helped ruin her career. I think she had other reasons also. But I just felt she didn't love Scotland.
Are we joined by the man who made it happen, Nigel Farage, as well as the senior advisor to Trump's presidential campaign, Jason Miller, as they discuss why the SNP should adopt Trump's no-nonsense approach to gender madness. Nigel will bring us some behind-the-scenes insight, too, to what was a brilliant interview. Also on the way tonight, with his coronation cameo edging closer, is Harry beginning to sweat over the vicious slurs he's made about his own family, including Camilla.
The villain. That made her dangerous because of the connections that she was forging within the British press.
So as he prepares to come face-to-face with his stepmother, does Harry owe Camilla an apology? The Daily Telegraph star columnist Celia Walden casts her judgment on the vengeful Duke in Uncancelled. And with the BBC's flagship political programme, Question Time, facing repeated accusations of left-wing bias, we launched our very own investigation at the most recent recording of the show to find out the real views of the audience members. And surprise, surprise, it was a congregation of the woke mob.
We rejoin the EU?
Without question.
Do you think Leave voters are racist?
Most racists are leavers, that's what I would say.
I'll bring you the rest of those rabid lefties hand-picked by the Beeb. That's in the Media Buzz later this hour. You'll also get the latest on those ghastly eco-terrorists from Just Stop Oil and tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. And the first front pages will arrive in mere moments too, right after the headlines at 10 with Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thank you. Good evening. Donald Trump has told GB News tonight he would end the Ukraine war in 24 hours if he's in the White House again. In an exclusive interview with Nigel Farage aired this evening, the former US president said the war has to be stopped.
If I were president, and I say this, I will end that war in one day. It'll take 24 hours. I know Zelensky well. I know Putin well. I would get that ended in a period of 24.
You can break that deal.
100%. It would be easy. That deal would be easy. A lot of it has to do with the money. A lot of it has to do with the military, that we're giving. But I would get that deal done within 24 hours. That war has to be stopped. That war is a disaster.
Well, you can watch that whole interview on the GB News app or on YouTube. Meanwhile, Ukraine denies it was behind a drone attack on the Kremlin. A video appears to show President Putin's residence being hit late last night. Russia says it was an assassination attempt, but the attack was thwarted with electronic defences disabling the aircraft. President Zelensky says Ukraine had nothing to do with it.
We don't attack Putin or Moscow. We fight on our territory. We are defending our villages and cities. We don't have, enough weapons for this. That's why we don't use it anywhere. For us, that is the deficit. We can't spend it. And we didn't attack Putin. We leave it to tribunal.
Well, in news here at home, the Prime Minister says he's aware tomorrow's local elections in England will be tough for the Conservative Party. On the last day of campaigning, Rishi Sunak said he's focusing on delivering the people's priorities.
We're concentrating on delivering on people's priorities to a local level. That's about low council tax, where Conservative areas have council tax that's on average £80 lower than Labour ones. Crime is lower, and we fill more potholes. Nationally, I'm focused on my 5 priorities.
Well, Sir Keir Starmer, for his part, says his mission was to get into government by 2024 and says the Conservative Party should make some gains to show it's not going backwards.
I have to say the baseline for the government is very, very low because they had terrible results 4 years ago, which is the cycle of these elections. That was their second worst election result in their history, and Theresa May had to personally apologise to their candidates afterwards. So they should be making significant gains tomorrow.
And just lastly, the sad news that Emma Raducanu is set to miss Wimbledon this year and the French Open due to a number of minor surgeries. Britain's #1 has encountered several fitness problems in recent months and pulled out of the Madrid Open last month with a hand injury. The 20-year-old says she'll have a minor procedure on both hands and on her ankle in an effort to resolve the issue. That's all from me. I'm back in an hour.
Tomorrow's news tonight now in our Media Buzz. So let's kick off with the very first look at the front pages, hot off the press. And the Metro leads with ring of steel thrown around Charles as the coronation security effort is stepped up. Some 11,500 coppers and 10,000 soldiers are on the street ahead of the big day on Saturday, with plans bolstered after last night's arrest at the palace. The Sun leads with a showbiz world exclusive revealing that the pop star Taylor Swift is dating the British frontman of the band 1975, Matty Healy. Now, Matt is the son of the Loose Women star Denise Welch, and Taylor Swift, she certainly has a thing for British men, does she not? My superstar panel back with me now, the author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton, the businessman and activist Adam Brooks, and the former Labour Party advisor Matthew Laza. Now, breaking tonight in an extraordinary intervention just 3 days before the coronation, former US President Donald Trump has slammed Meghan Markle for treating the late Queen Elizabeth disrespectfully and revealing he's surprised Harry has been invited to his father's big day. Trump, who's running for the White House again next year, made the damning but, in my opinion, very spot-on comments in his world-exclusive interview with Nigel Farage from Scotland that aired tonight. Watch.
Well, I think that she has been very disrespectful to the Queen, frankly, even during that time. I mean, how can you be disrespectful to the Queen? She went through years and years and decades without controversy and just did a great job. You cannot be disrespectful to her. And I think Meghan was very disrespectful to her. She was treated so disrespectfully by Meghan, and just no reason to do that. I was actually surprised that Harry was invited, to be honest.
I think at the end of the day, even after a fallout, it's still his son, isn't it?
Well, I don't know. Look, I mean, different types of people, but I think it was very nice that they invited him, but I was a little surprised. He said some terrible things when you see what he said, and the book was just
horrible. Yeah.
To me, it was horrible.
Yeah, it was.
I have to say, I'm with Trump on that one. Rescind the invite. Anyway, from the Sussexes naming their daughter after the Queen without asking her, slagging off Her Majesty's treasured Commonwealth, dropping the fake royal race bomb in the Oprah Winfrey interview. Oh, and this horrible moment, remember this, where Meghan mockingly recreated the moment she first met the late monarch on her shameless Netflix documentary. It's hard to disagree with Trump's assessment. After all, the Duchess of Delusion was banned from the Queen's deathbed by Charles for a reason. So, just 3 days from the coronation and some truth bombs from Trump on GB News tonight, Adam Brooks. But I have to be honest, I think most folk at home will be with him.
100%. I think what he said was completely right.
Now, it actually makes me sad. I liked the Queen a lot. She reminded me of my nan. My nan used to live with us at one point, and me and her would sit and watch the royal occasions. My nan loved the Queen. So I loved the Queen. You know, I won't lie about that. I really did. And it makes me sad that the last few years of her life, she had this turmoil around and sort of these splits around the family. And that's not nice when you think about any family. The last years should really be your most peaceful years.
And Christine Hamilton, it did hit the Queen and Prince Philip hard, because remember, it wasn't just all of the royal drama. We heard from Princess Anne this week, who spoke about how they had many of the beautiful moments of their final years stolen from them. The word used was thievery because of the vile COVID lockdowns. But they also, when they were together in the bubble at Windsor Castle, were having to deal with the constant stream of rubbish being thrown at them by this ghastly couple.
It's almost unbelievable that any son can write that about his father. And to say it was ghost-written, but Harry approved every word.
He read the audiobook.
He did. I read the audiobook. And Meghan did as well. Don't tell me there's anything in that book that Meghan didn't approve of. And I found it was very big of Charles to say, yes, come to the coronation. And an awful lot of fathers would have said, you know, you have called my wife a villain. You know, I don't want anything to do with you.
But don't you think Trump's right because it was interesting, the disagreement between Trump and Nigel about whether Harry should be invited, because Farage, and I understand why he's going to be on very shortly, said, well, look, it's his son. But for Trump, it's like, no, he said terrible, terrible things.
I agree with Nigel on that. I think... and anyway,
so
it's
I'm
his
with
decision.
Trump, I have to say.
I know he's not responsible for all the invitations, but something like that, it's his decision. He wanted his son there. And don't forget, I mean, he must be so disappointed. He walked Meghan Markle up the aisle.
When she had thrown her own dad under the bus.
Exactly. And don't forget, Harry has still never met his father-in-law.
Disgraceful.
I mean, it's disgraceful.
He's 3 hours down the bloody road.
I know.
Matthew Laza, you have a different take on this, don't you? Because you feel like Harry and Meghan should have been treated better by the royal family.
Well, I think that nobody thinks that what they did was nice. To the late Queen, but I think that Harry is clearly but I think Harry is clearly a very, very troubled soul, and it seems to me that the royal family has collectively has a duty of care.
Troubled or a spoilt brat?
Well, I think I'm frankly, it's my idea of hell to wade through the book, but so I haven't done it. But those who have,
you're a bit of a Republican, aren't you?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm half an Aussie, and so I've got I'm a bit of a Republican. Is a good way of describing it. I wouldn't, I'm not like my nan would have said chop off the heads and wanted to turn Buckingham Palace into council houses. So a different,
a true lefty,
a true lefty, sort of absolutely. Stronger even than we do on this sofa. But I think that. One thing that strikes me, though, is Trump interfering in our politics. Remember when the Trump visit, when he kept the Queen waiting for 15 minutes? So I have a few issues with Trump interfering with our politics.
He's a great fan of the royal family, so I very much supported it. But look, yesterday I showed you the moment a Just Stop Oil protester got their foot run over by a motorist after eco-extremists got in the way of their car. Here's a reminder.
You're right. It's gone over a foot. Are you okay? It's gone over a foot.
In a just world, cops would tell that green loon to be more careful next time and don't stand in the middle of the road in front of oncoming vehicles. But surprise, surprise, the Met is now calling for witnesses and dash cam footage so they can go after the driver. Yet again, it's an outrage that innocent Brits intent on grafting hard, providing for their families and cracking on with life, are let down by the very police officers meant to protect them. It was only last week that officers threatened to arrest another frustrated motorist for assault when he tried dragging Just Stop Oil out of the road in London, a job they should be doing themselves. So I think these coppers need to step up and start working on behalf of the people who pay their wages, and fast. Just Stop Oil have been warned, by the way. They have been warned. If you stand in the middle of a road, you've got to be expecting to be hit by a car. It's obvious. Matthew Laza, Adam Brooks, Christine Hamilton, do stand by, because coming up, as our very own Ben Leo uncovers blatant bias in the BBC's Question Time audience, is it time to cut off the Beeb's financial support from the British taxpayer? My superstar panel will be back to tackle that, plus we'll have more of tomorrow's newspaper front pages. But next, we react to more of the bombshells from the GB News world-exclusive interview with Donald Trump earlier today, including explain his unmissable take on scheming Sturgeon's gender madness. Senior advisor to Trump's 2024 presidential campaign, Jason Miller, and the man everyone wants to talk to today, Nigel Farage. They're both with me live straight after this.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories. Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Breaking tonight in a major world-exclusive interview with GB News star Nigel Farage, Donald Trump has tackled every big issue in international politics. And speaking from Scotland, the former US president, who is running for the Republican nomination, has slammed the troubled and scandal-plagued ex-First Minister of Scotland, scheming Sturgeon, for damaging her nation. Trump weighed in on the shocking case of double rapist Isla Bryson, who exposed the failing SNP's sick gender reform bill after he was sent to a women's prison. Watch.
Well, I think a lot of countries have had enough of it, what's going on. And I know that case, and I thought it was terrible. And I guess it helped ruin her career. I think she had other reasons also. But I just felt she didn't love Scotland. Well, they just said, I just walked by and there was a big crowd for a wedding, a beautiful wedding, incredible people. And they were not happy with the people that were running Scotland, let's put it that way. They said, run for First Minister, sir, run for First Minister.
One of about 20 massive scoops from that fascinating sit-down. So to react now, I'm delighted to be joined by the man behind the extraordinary exclusive interview, Nigel Farage, live from Scotland, and also senior advisor to Trump's presidential campaign, Jason Miller. So look, Nigel, we've got lots to unpick here, but can we start with Scotland? Because obviously this is a huge scandal, what's going on in Scotland at the moment. Most of the mainstream media in the UK seem to want to ignore what's going on. So it's very significant, isn't it, to see Trump talking in this way about the failed regime of Nicola Sturgeon?
Well, look, I mean, 3 weeks ago we had Sleepy Joe spending 4 days in Ireland because his great-great-grandparents left there in 1840. But hey, I'm Irish, despite the fact Biden's an English name and he's got relations in Surrey. Donald Trump has a lot more Scotland in him than Joe Biden has Ireland in him. He clearly admired and loved his mother, Mary McLeod, hugely. She was a West Coaster, of course, Western Isles. And that was why Turnberry was the most appropriate place, I thought, to meet him. He cares a lot about Scotland. This is the first American president, possibly in decades, that really cares about the relationship with the UK. And it's there within him at an emotional level. Make no mistake about any of that. I thought what he said about Sturgeon was interesting. Basically, what he's saying is that her actions were against the interests of Scotland, that Scotland became a place that rather than put money into, people took money out of. That was said with great, great passion. He was fairly neutral about the new First Minister, but then he doesn't really know him very well. I did remind him of one or two of the quotes. But no, I thought the stuff he said on Scotland was very powerful, very interesting. And let me tell you, this Turnberry Hotel, Golf and Spa Complex, in the height of season, employs 500 well-paid people. Without it, goodness knows where this coastline would be. So, this is really important stuff. And the idea that a First Minister wouldn't encourage someone like Donald Trump to invest, rather want to have a fight with him the whole time, I thought he highlighted that pretty well.
I know, it's a brilliant hotel, Turnberry. And Jason Miller, you can see Trump's passion for the nation, but it is shocking when you think Sturgeon never made any attempt to build a relationship with him because of his politics, despite the huge investment he makes into Scotland.
No, Dean, you're exactly right. And we have a phrase here in the U.S. that everything woke turns to, well, I'll say rubbish so Ofcom doesn't smack down our good friends at GBNews. But what I was really struck by is not just the kinship between President Trump and Nigel, which was just a great thing to watch unfold on camera, but the affinity that President Trump has for not just Scotland and England, but the UK overall. And if you live in the UK and you're concerned about the relationship with the US, if you're concerned about the safety and the need to work together to deter those who are threatening both the UK and the US, then President Trump showed that the relationship between the two countries will get much better if he's back in the White House.
Well, indeed, because Trump also gave us a reminder of the special relationship that could have been as he directed very warm words towards the former Prime Minister, Boris Johnson. Watch.
I liked him so much, I still like him, but he really went a little bit on the liberal side. I mean, he all of a sudden became an environmentalist, and I'm talking about probably in a negative way, too much. Look, we all want to protect the environment. Nobody does more than I do. I do a lot of jobs. Look at this. This was done environmentally so incredible. Turnberry, Aberdeen. But something happened. He changed. And a wonderful guy. He's a friend of mine.
Mm.
So, Nigel, he didn't rule out a possibility of a Boris comeback later on in the interview, did he?
No, he didn't. But I mean, come on, let's be realistic, Dan. Whatever you and I may think of Rishi Sunak and his Blairite spin, the one thing he's brought to the Conservative Party is stability over the total and absolute chaos of Boris Johnson. And maybe you and I don't quite see eye to eye.
No, I don't agree with that. But yes, I understand where you're coming from.
But what I really got there was the sense of disappointment that Boris had become the inheritor of the Brexit legacy. And hey, I'd made his life pretty easy. You know, I'd helped him in many ways. I mean, I don't think Boris would even
Which Trump gave you credit for tonight.
Yeah, no. I mean, look, you know, if I hadn't got rid of Mrs. May with the Brexit Party, Boris would never have been PM. But I think what Trump feels is what I feel, that they had this 80-seat majority. The first time in almost 40 years, there was an opportunity to really be conservative, to really be radical, to really change things. And Boris blew it. And, you know, Trump said how disappointed he was in that sense with this move towards the green agenda. But the most telling part on the Conservatives was Trump said they'd moved to the far left.
Yeah.
Now,
which on some things they have. Come on. Net zero or nut zero, maybe, as we should call it.
But my belief with these interviews is the public are bored with the one-on-one punch-ups. What is more interesting is to hear what people actually have to say, to let them speak. And whether that's Donald Trump or a bunch of lunatics that want to disrupt the Grand National, I try and let people have their own say. Now,
well, you did.
Maybe.
Because you weren't trying to trip him up all the time.
No, I wanted to hear what he had to say about things. I disagree with him on the emphasis on a stolen election and other things like that. But maybe far left is a bit over the top. But truth is, this is the least conservative government we've ever had in the history of our nation. And we're faced with a choice between two forms of social democracy. And I said to him, maybe 13 years in power is too long. He said, no, not necessarily if they'd stayed true to being conservative.
Well, I actually thought that was a really good point. Jason Miller, it also really struck me that Trump was very honest about the fact that he doesn't have a relationship with Rishi Sunak, the current Prime Minister of this country. Now, that feels very strange to me. You would have seen this week members of Sunak's cabinet meeting with Ron DeSantis, the Florida governor. Do you think it's wrong that Trump's in the country and Sunak hasn't tried to meet him or reached out to him, or has he behind the scenes?
Well, in fairness, keep in mind that the UK has had several prime ministers in the last year or so.
Oh, don't remind us. Don't remind us.
There's a little bit of rotating at the top. But I think it was notable that President Trump, at least from the U.S. perspective, we had somebody paying respect to the king during the week of coronation. I mean, these things don't come along very often. And for Joe Biden to come over to the U.K., to Northern Ireland, and to Ireland, not even come over to London, not even to address anything dealing with the coronation or the king. I thought it was really disrespectful. I thought it set just a really bad tone and it was poor form. So at least with President Trump, the U.S. is well represented, and I like that. I'm not too worried about the Rishi Sunak part. I mean, Rishi's going to stay out of U.S. politics as much as he can. But with President Trump, we see what the future can look like.
And Nigel, I've got to ask you about that great moment where you and Trump had a respectful disagreement about Prince Harry. And I have to be honest with you, Nigel, I'm with Trump on this. I'm hardline when it comes to Harry. Why on earth should Harry be at the coronation after everything he said about his family in Spare? And that was the clear implication from Trump there. He doesn't think he should be there at all.
No, and on merit, on pure merit, after the disgusting things that were said in that book, especially about Camilla, you can't say Trump is wrong. But there is something that goes over, above, and beyond that. And that is, as a parent, it is incredible what you forgive your children for. I'm not speaking about my parents, by the way. But, it is incredible what you will forgive. And at the end of the day, it's still his son. So I get why the invitation went out. And you can argue protocol and all of these things. He is still Charles's son. I get the invitation. And I have to say, I think it's right that Harry attends, even if it is very, very brief.
Jason Miller, just a quick final word from you. The polls are looking incredibly strong for you at the moment. You're obviously now back as a formal advisor for the 2024 campaign. Are you worried at all about DeSantis? Do you think it was interesting that he made a trip to the UK? Is he trying to furnish himself with foreign affairs credentials before declaring his candidacy? Or is DeSantis actually not a concern given you're stomping him in the polls?
Well, we take everyone seriously, but it's not of concern. I think what Ron DeSantis is finding out is that narcissism and inexperience are a dangerous combination when you're running for president. I think that's why he's 46 points behind President Trump. Well, I mean, just to give you the unvarnished straight scoop here. But the more telling point, Dan and Nigel, as well, is that President Trump is leading Joe Biden in the general election polls. Another poll out today with President Trump leading by 7 points. And with the country heading toward a recession, with all the economic indicators looking very negative, it's going to be tough for Joe Biden to still be president after 2024. President Trump is very well positioned as we move into this next year. And I tell you, having been a veteran of 2016, 2020, and now 2024, I have never seen him this focused and wanting it this badly as he is right now.
And Nigel nodding in agreement. Well, look, it was an absolutely fascinating interview. As I say, Nigel, scoop after scoop. It's currently the main splash on the Daily Mail website, so it's going international. Thank you so much to Nigel and, of course, senior advisor to Donald Trump's 2024 campaign, Jason Miller. But coming up in Uncancelled, after dragging his stepmom Camilla through the mud, including branding her dangerous in recent media appearances, does Prince Harry owe the Queen Consort a face-to-face apology at this week's coronation? Daily Telegraph columnist Celia Warden certainly thinks so. She's live later in the show. But next in the Media Buzz, as we uncover blatant audience bias at last week's BBC Question Time, and with just 1 in 5 Brits still supporting the licence fee, is it time to scrap this telly poll tax once and for all? My superstar panel have plenty to say on this. Plus, we've got more of tomorrow's newspaper front pages straight after this.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are. We don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us 4, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Celia Warden on the way, but first let's return to tomorrow's news tonight in our media buzz, and more front pages have just been delivered. And the Daily Mail gearing up for the coronation on Saturday by declaring, "Let the pomp and pageantry begin." Meanwhile, the newspaper reports on the biggest security operation ever, with 11,500 coppers and 10,000 soldiers expected to be on the streets and facial recognition cameras scanning the crowds. The Eye reports on plans for the King to repair damaged relations with Europe in the wake of Brexit after his recent visit to Germany, which they say had a major diplomatic impact. I'd just give the Eye a little reminder, and anyone who thinks the story is a good idea, that's not the job of the King, and we want our monarchy to last, don't we? So I think it's better he stays out of our post-Brexit relations with Europe. My superstar panel return now. The author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton in the house alongside the businessman and activist Adam Brooks and the former Labour Party advisor Matthew Laza. Now, a bombshell new poll has sent shockwaves through the BBC today after it found just 1 in 5 Brits now back the outdated licence fee. Only 21% of voters quizzed by YouGov for The Sun want to carry on with the current system where every household is forced to pay a whopping £159 per year for all of that hard-left content. It's hardly a surprise, given the growing culture of wokery and bias at what I now call the British Bashing Corporation, not least at its flagship political show, Question Time. Despite claims of a carefully balanced panel and public audience, this was the laughable scene during an embarrassing episode just last month.
Who believes Boris Johnson was telling the truth yesterday? Who believes there is a way back for Boris Johnson now? Right, one hand.
So, with the Beeb falling out of favour with Brits and Question Time's bias in the spotlight, I sent our senior producer Ben Leo out to the most recent recording of Question Time to investigate who's really in that hand-picked audience.
Leo, Dan Wootton tonight. We're here in Greenford, West London, where the BBC is holding its latest edition of Question Time. We want to find out if their claim of audience impartiality and balance stacks up. Should we rejoin the EU?
Without question.
Do you think Leave voters are racist?
Most racists are Leavers, that's what I would say.
What's your thoughts on Suella Braverman?
Well, everything she is saying would have been said by, like, the BNP and the fringe groups.
If there was an election tomorrow, who would you vote for?
At the moment, Lib Dems.
Suella Braverman is playing into the extremists' hands.
There's a panel of 5, and I'm the only Leave supporter. I'd be very interested to know why the BBC can't reflect the wider country.
Who are you from?
GB News.
I wouldn't bother with GB News.
Do you want a quick chat?
You've got racist straight mob.
Let's have a chat. Let's have a friendly chat. Why not?
You're bigoted, you're right-wing, you support the Tories. What more is there to say?
Can you give an example of how GB News has been bigoted? Sir, can you give an example of how GB News has been bigoted?
There's nothing more to add.
OK. What's your thoughts on Suella Braverman? Is she doing a good job?
No. The policies of hatred are coming back again. Let's blame the immigrant for everything.
Would you take a migrant in your house?
I don't think it's big enough.
I'd like to see a Lib Dem Labour coalition.
Is there anyone here who supports what the government is doing? I see loads of hands going down.
No Rishi, no drama. He's been in a few months and he's just getting on with it the best he can. So I back him.
You're the first person we've spoken to who said they'd vote Tory tonight.
OK, well, I'm the only one talking common sense.
So, Christine Hamilton, look, I know we had a bit of a laugh there, but there's a really serious point because the BBC insists that its Question Time audience is balanced. Ben Leo found one Conservative voter. What a joke.
Well, they should check the way they select these people. They should sack the people who select them. I mean, it's madness. They're obviously not. But the whole licence fee system, we are forced to pay for this, which is totally wrong. It's outdated. It's archaic. What the BBC, first of all, they don't even meet us halfway. They don't even say, right, we will put advertising on Radio 1 or we will put advertising in the gap between EastEnders or something. They won't even do anything like that. What I think we should do, I think there should be a much smaller BBC funded by general taxation. So we have things like world news and things like that and, you know, the higher-end cultural events that wouldn't necessarily be on commercial television. But they are fighting commercial television with our money, and it's just not right.
But Matthew Lazar, can we talk specifically about Question Time here for a second? Because this is why people are turning off, wanting to pay the licence fee. It's so obvious that Question Time has a completely anti-Tory audience every single week.
I think there is an issue with audience balance. I nearly became the editor of Question Time.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, no.
And you're an ex-Labour advisor, so you ticked all the
This was before. This was before, but I was going to say, I would send you into... Question Time is now made by BBC Scotland, but I was told you'd only have to spend at most one night a week in Scotland. But I was ultimately not regarded as not Scottish enough. David Dimbleby gave me a tick, but I wasn't given a tick by the BBC bosses in Scotland. But it is a nightmare finding audiences. There is an issue that people lie to get on the programmes like that. But I think it's a bit of a tired format, to be honest with you. I kind of move on and try and find a different way of doing.
Well, no, I'm going to be hiring you now.
Exactly.
I think you're right. It's time. I mean, I haven't watched it for years.
Yeah, because Adam Brooks, when it was Dimbleby back in the day, actually, you did genuinely feel like it was the public square, and it was both sides of the argument coming together. Now, and I know this for a fact, no senior Conservative politicians want to go on Question Time because they know they are the lamb to slaughter.
I haven't watched Question Time for probably a couple of years.
Well, I hope not, given that this show's on at the same time on Thursday night.
I haven't watched it for a couple of years, and that is because there was no balance. I used to watch Question Time to get my knowledge and to see the different opinions from both sides and make up my mind with those opinions.
But it's not that now.
But what the BBC has become a political arm of the Labour Party.
Yes.
And I feel like I am paying for preachers and activists like Gary Lineker to have millions in the bank.
I would say that it's become the political... one thing everybody says that, and then as a Labour person who worked in the BBC, I can tell you I was regarded as incredibly right-wing. It's a liberal metropolitan consensus because of the people that they hire, and that is an issue that needs to be challenged.
The system has to change. What other country jowls pensioners for not paying a licence fee for content they don't watch?
Well, the whole thing comes to an end in 2027, so that is the moment.
Good.
Right,
Yeah.
you've had
and I'm
chips.
a lot harder edged than you on this, Christine Hamilton. I actually think the BBC is bad for Britain. The licence fee should be scrapped, and they should go and survive in the commercial market, and then they'll have to actually...
Well, they're not impartial anymore, Dan.
No, they're not.
That's been
well, look, and that proves it. By the way...
It's one of Britain's biggest assets.
Very tellingly, we asked the BBC about Ben Leo's investigation. They didn't even bother to
reply.
Matthew Lazar, Adam Brooks, Christine Hamilton, do stand by, because coming up, as Just Stop Oil's eco-loons continue to cause chaos, should their pathetic protests now be outlawed? We're going to debate that when I crown tonight's Greatest British Union jackass. To me, it shouldn't be outlawed because it's protest. It should be outlawed because it's eco-terrorism and someone is going to die. I feel so strongly about that. But next and uncancelled, does Prince Harry owe stepmother Camilla a face-to-face apology at this weekend's coronation after dragging her through the media dirt? And do Princes Andrew and Harry actually have more in common than they'd like to admit? We'll start Daily Telegraph columnist Celia Wootton live on both those issues as we count down to the coronation in just 2 minutes' time.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we
get out of it.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's time now for Uncancelled. And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. Now, Prince Harry is threatening to throw all of the best-laid coronation plans out the window, with rumours swirling that he could pull out of the big day at the last minute. And while Meghan is no doubt planning her latest attention-seeking publicity stunt, her odd little hagiographer, this weird bloke Omid Scobie, made this bombshell claim on ITV's This Morning. Look.
Sussexes had to wait for some time to really get that confirmation that they were 100% welcome at this event.
But if Harry does turn up to the coronation, it will be the first time he's seen his family since a string of vicious interviews and the publication of his drivel-filled book, Spare. Not only will he have to confront the King and Prince William, but he'll also have to face Camilla, who he described as dangerous in one of several tirades against her.
The villain. I want to sort of just briefly talk about your stepmother in the press. You say that your interests were sacrificed on her PR altar, to quote.
Those certain members have decided to get into bed with the devil.
How was she dangerous?
Because of the need for her to rehabilitate her image.
That made her dangerous?
That made her dangerous because of the connections that she was forging within the British press.
So, to talk about Harry's potential face-off with Camilla at the coronation, I'm delighted to be joined now by the Daily Telegraph's star columnist, Celia Walden. So, Celia, look, that only happened a few weeks ago, right? He's going to see his stepmother for the first time at the coronation. Surely it's actually Harry who owes Camilla an apology.
I mean, you would think so, wouldn't you? It's going to be a very awkward moment, that's for sure. But when you consider the reason that I get so annoyed about this, I've met Camilla a couple of times, and she was delightful, very down to earth, one of those people who immediately connects with you, has a great sense of humour, a bit of a mischievous twinkle in her eye, and the idea that it was such an easy target to go for her, wasn't it? It was just because he knows that there is all this baggage, and he thought, I know, I'll just play into that, call her the villain, and it seems incredibly unlikely. Obviously, he knows her better than I do, but I don't believe it.
No, indeed. And Celia, it's hard to believe now, but Prince Andrew was actually once Harry's favourite uncle. Did you know that? And a sensational new book has highlighted the uncanny similarities between the two royal outcasts, which extends beyond their shared low approval ratings. Sorry, that's mean but true. Both were naughty children. This is the thesis again. Both were naughty children, Camilla, that were indulged by besotted mothers. Both were womanizers in their late teens and 20s. Both fell in love with minor American actresses, and both have proved to be a massive headache to their families. So with the two Windsor spares always destined to cause trouble to the royal family, Celia, do the disgraced princes now risk destroying the coronation?
I don't think. I mean, Andrew's not going to be doing anything. I don't think it moving forward at all. Harry is just going to do a flyby, isn't he? Literally, and sort of drop in. It's an in and out. I don't think he will do anything on the day. But I don't think he has stopped his revenge campaign by any means. And that apology he owes to sort of pretty much everyone there, I would think, as well as all the people that he mentions in his book. But I can't see him apologising to anyone, because I think everyone, he thinks the world should be apologising to him. But what they have in common primarily, Andrew and Harry, I think, is just a very strong sense of entitlement. And I think that is what differentiates them from probably some of the other members of the royal family.
And by the way, this isn't my thesis, Celia. It's a new book, isn't it, which claims all of these similarities between Andrew and Harry, which I sort of think it stacks up. But actually, what I find fascinating, I've done a lot of reporting on the royal family over the past few years, and I know lots of members of the public will be offended by this, but amongst the royals, they actually still really like Andrew, and they believe him, and they think he's acted respectfully over the past couple of years. That is certainly not how they feel about Harry and Meghan. And none of the minor royals want to speak to Harry at the coronation, Celia. I mean, it's extraordinary.
It really is. And actually, I know that our latest opinion poll, I think, had Andrew right at the bottom, and then Harry, and then I think Meghan was somewhere languishing at 18%. But in America, there was a period, I don't know if it's still true, but not that long ago, Harry actually ranked below Prince Andrew, which was quite something.
It really is. That's a bad day at the office, right? OK, Cecilia, how are you celebrating? And the big question, are you going to pledge the oath of allegiance?
I'm not, and I think that was a mistake. I think it's going to be a great day, but I do think that he should be, in fact, the king should be pledging an oath to us. He should be.
That would have been nice.
Don't you think? No, but I think it is as a democratic. I'm totally in favour of the royal family, but the pledge, I think that was a mistake, because it has not been done before, as I understand. So it was a new. And I get the idea, it was to get rouse some royal sentiment, but I think it was really the wrong time to get people to say that.
Yeah, and especially seeing it includes the heirs and the successors, which, to bring this full circle, obviously includes Harry and Andrew. There you go. Well, look, have a brilliant weekend celebrating, Celia. We will speak very soon. Star Daily Telegraph columnist Celia Wootton. But it's time now to reveal tonight's greatest Britain and Union Jackass. My superstar panel return. Christine Hamilton, who's your nominee for tonight's greatest Britain?
Well, it's our very own GB News' Jacob Rees-Mogg for showing the most wonderful British coolness and sang-froid when he was broadcasting from outside Buckingham Palace when there was an explosion, when the fellow threw the cartridges, etc. He didn't bat an eyelid.
Oh, my goodness, let's watch it again. I can't get enough of this.
I'm very sorry to say that it is good evening for me for the time being, as I think that was probably a controlled explosion in the background.
Cool as a cucumber. Well, let me tell you, I was obviously sitting in here in the studio when Jacob threw back, and I was not as calm as both him and Michael Cole on the scene. Adam Brooks, your nominee for Greatest Britain.
I've been very critical of the Met Police, so I'm sort of holding my nose on this one, but I'm nominating them for finally starting to drag these eco-terrorists off our roads and getting a little bit of calmness in the capital.
And Matthew Laza, your nominee.
Is Camilla, the Queen Consort, for having captured the nation's heart by going from being zero to hero by being herself and just being genuine and really turning it around, something that Harry hasn't noticed.
And you're a Republican, so that's an extraordinary nomination.
Absolutely.
Wow. But look, I'm going to go close to home tonight. I've got to go with Christine Hamilton because I just thought it was a masterclass in the British attitude of keep calm and carry on, even when there's explosions going off around you. So well done to my colleague Jacob Rees-Mogg. But Union Jackass time now, Christine Hamilton. Who's yours?
Well, it's good old Nicola Sturgeon. She has called her colleague Joanna Cherry a homophobe, and their various other names. Joanna Cherry came out as a lesbian about 40 years ago. So it's offensive, it's ridiculous, and it's utterly stupid and jackassish.
Yeah, indeed. This is Joanna Cherry speaking about it.
Sturgeon said that women like me's views were invalid and called us transphobes and homophobes, which seemed very ludicrous to me, as I'm a lesbian who's been out since the 80s, so calling me homophobic is a bit ridiculous.
No, and I was so pleased to hear that from Joanna Cherry. Of course, Sturgeon, scheming Sturgeon as I call her, didn't pinpoint Joanna Cherry, but the irony on this is that I don't agree with Joanna Cherry at all when it comes to Scottish separatism. I absolutely agree with her when it comes to gender-critical madness, and that means that Sturgeon was also calling me a homophobe, which doesn't really make sense. Adam Brooks, your nominee.
My nominee is the entitled, middle-class, lovey eco-terrorists that are causing mayhem on our roads. I've had a few Twitter exchanges with Just Stop Oil this week, and they are lunatics. So they are my nomination.
Yeah, and of course, this is the moment that they want to blame, Adam, they want to blame this moment happening on the likes of you and me. Watch.
You're right.
It went over a foot.
Are you okay?
It's gone over a foot.
Now, I just want to be very clear to Just Stop Oil. That incident was not the fault of Adam Brooks or myself. That was the fault of the fact that you decided to stand in the middle of a busy road. And actually, you only need a couple of brain cells. I know you don't have many, but you only need a couple of brain cells to realise if you keep standing in the middle of busy roads, it's likely at some point one of those things called cars, I know you hate them, are going to run into you. So please just get off the roads. Matthew Laza, your nominee.
Mine's the entire government for forcing us to vote. If we want to vote tomorrow, to have to bring photo ID, a solution in search of a problem. But if you are going to vote, remember your photo ID.
Good public service announcement there. Of course, it is the local elections tomorrow. But I'm going with Adam Brooks. It was a tough one, given Scheming Sturgeon was nominated as well. But Just Stop Oil have taken the cake with their ludicrous blaming of right-wing commentators when one of their poor baby protesters got their foot run over standing in the middle of the road.
Allegedly got their...
One week you'll pick mine, you'll pick me.
Adam Brooks, Christine Hamilton, Matthew Laza, thank you so much. Another public service announcement from me, though. You've got to be with us tomorrow night at 9 p.m. because we're counting down to the coronation with a special live show from Buckingham Palace. I'm joined by all of our royal legends. Tom Bower, Lady Colin Campbell, Angela Levin, Paul Burrell, Phil Dampier, Alison Pearson. Be with us at 9 o'clock tomorrow. Until then, good night.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m.
as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, you're with GB News. In a moment, headliners. But first, let's bring you the latest news headlines. And Donald Trump has told GB News this evening he would end the Ukraine war within 24 hours if he was in the White House again. In an exclusive interview with Nigel Farage, the former US president said the war had to be stopped.
If I were president, and I say this, I will end that war in one day. It'll take 24 hours. I know Zelensky well. I know Putin well. I would get that ended in a period of 24.
You can break that deal.
100%. It would be easy. That deal would be easy. A lot of it has to do with the money. A lot of it has to do with the military, that we're giving. But I would get that deal done within 24 hours. That war has to be stopped. That war is a disaster.
And if you'd like to see that in its entirety, you can see it on the GB News app and on YouTube. Meanwhile, Ukraine denies it was behind a drone attack on the Kremlin. A video appears to show President Putin's residence being hit late last night. Russia says it was an assassination attempt, but the attack was thwarted, with electronic defences disabling the aircraft. President Zelensky, though, says Ukraine had nothing to do with it.
We don't attack Putin or Moscow. We fight on our territory. We are defending our villages and cities. We don't have, enough weapon for this. That's why we don't use it anywhere. For us, that is the deficit. We can't spend it. And we didn't attack Putin. We leave it to tribunal.
Volodymyr Zelensky there. Well, the Prime Minister says he's aware tomorrow's local elections in England will be tough for the Conservative Party. On the last day of campaigning, Rishi Sunak said he's focused on delivering priorities for the people.
We're concentrating on delivering on people's priorities. So at a local level, that's about lower council tax, where Conservative areas have council tax that's on average £80 lower than Labour ones. Crime is lower, and we fill more potholes. Nationally, I'm focused on my 5 priorities.
Meanwhile, Sir Keir Starmer says his mission was to get into government by 2024, and he says the Conservative Party should make gains to show it's not going backwards.
I have to say the baseline for the government is very, very low because they had terrible results 4 years ago, which is the cycle of these elections. That was their second worst election result in their history, and Theresa May had to personally apologise to their candidates afterwards. So they should be making significant gains tomorrow.
And lastly, Emma Raducanu is set to miss Wimbledon and the French Open due to a number of minor surgeries. Britain's #1 has encountered several fitness problems in recent months and pulled out of the Madrid Tennis Open last month with a hand injury. The 20-year-old says she'll have a minor procedure on both hands and on her ankle, and she hopes that'll resolve the issues. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and on the TuneIn app. This is GB News. Now, headliners.
Hello and welcome to Headliners, a titillating peek at tomorrow's newspapers. I'm Leo Kearson. I'm joined tonight by comedians from either side of the Atlantic. We've got the Brooklyn brawler, Lewis Schaefer, and the Maidenhead mangler, Diane Spencer. Just trying to give you some wrestling nicknames there. Don't know if they'll catch on.
I like it. I mean, I'm not sure about the leotards. Could we get leotards?
I'm not sure we'd be allowed to wear leotards. It might be breaching some sort of filth legislation. Anyway, moving on, let's have a quick look at Thursday's front pages before we get stuck into the insides. The Daily Mail leads with biggest security operation ever for the coronation. The Financial Times has LSE chief seeks higher pay for bosses to stem listings exodus, whatever that means. The Express has real hope in battle to beat Alzheimer's. The Guardian has revealed the scale of elite school links to slave trade. The Telegraph has best ever Alzheimer's drug can halt disease. And the Star has he's not the Messiah, he's a very naughty chatbot. And those were your Thursday's front pages. And let's have a closer look at those front pages, starting with the Financial Times, Lewis.
Well, this is the big news. I don't know. It should be on every. It's the end of the world.
Again?
Yeah.
What is it?
This is Kremlin explosions. Ukraine denies Russian accusations it tried to assassinate Putin. And I've seen the video. And there's been a drone or some kind of plane, missile.
Two drones
that happened to land right on this round building, whatever they got at the Kremlin.
The Senate Palace.
Is that what the Senate Palace is? They said
to assassinate. What happened?
To assassinate. I know what happened. To assassinate Putin.